Have you ever felt like everything is just designed to keep you in your place? Like you're taking a leisurely stroll to maybe check out that nice beach that you pass by all the time, but just haven't had a chance to visit yet? But then on your way over, though, you're interrupted by speeding cars and an enormous multi-lane highway. Then after walking through that noisy, damp tunnel underneath said highway, you arrive to find that the beach is closed for no good reason. Now you have a long walk back home, but you have to go to the bathroom first, so no problem, you'll just use a public restroom. No, you won't, there is none. Well, it's not ideal, but you can just relieve yourself on a nearby tree. Only before you're done, you're being approached by 3 police officers that just arrived on their bicycles. Apparently, it's illegal to urinate in public. As you plead to them that you couldn't find any public restrooms, you realize something. How did they even know that I was here? Turns out there was a video camera mounted to a pole that you didn't notice. Well, these are signs that you might be living in a dystopia. What is a dystopia, you ask? Good question. It's the opposite of a utopia. A utopia is a place that's perfect. It's harmonious and stable, and it offers equality for everyone. There's no war or poverty or injustice in a utopia. The name comes from a Greek root, eu meaning not, and topos for place. So literally, it means no place, unfortunately. As the opposite of utopias, dystopias are oppressive places of misery, where you're subject to ubiquitous mechanisms of control. Luckily, utopias, and therefore dystopias, don't technically exist in reality. They're more commonly found in stories, and literature, and in film. Or are they? Films like The Truman Show reveal just how connected real places, utopias, and dystopias actually are. Truman Burbank lives in a city that, in the film at least, is presented as a stage set, designed specifically to provide the illusion of an ideal city or a utopia. The town called Sea Haven is a utopia from Truman's point of view alone. From the point of view of others, the true nature of the place is pretty clear and obvious. The town was designed to control him, and in order to maintain that control, it was designed so that he can't see through the artifice into the mechanisms that are monitoring and controlling his life. The town is filled with nice houses, it offers a frictionless daily routine, nice neighbors, and of course abundant sunshine.
Oh, and in case I don't see you.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Sound familiar at all? Sea Haven was designed for Truman, but all cities are designed to control certain people over others, at least a little bit. Every city has a little bit of Sea Haven in them. For those of us for whom the city is designed, it's hard to tell which aspects are part of our dream and which are part of the overall nightmare. And that's what I want to identify. To look at the design of our surroundings and pick out what's there just to disempower us, like unwitting cast members in a reality TV show that's at our expense, and which are there for more benevolent reasons. To help me distinguish between the two, I reached out to an expert, Dr. Dan Bashara, and together we came up with 6 signs that you are living in a dystopia.
There's so many films about science fiction in the city, and what the city does to us as almost a science fiction invention itself.
Science fiction films are a particularly great place for this, and The Truman Show is ultimately all about this. Utopia and dystopia offers 2 ends of a continuum. They allow us to see what might be possible, either good or bad, and then they offer benchmarks to either strive toward or to try and avoid. Between those endpoints, we can analyze and map real cities for their affinities for either direction. But it's important to keep in mind that this exercise, it's more complicated than just ranking cities as good or bad.
It's 2 sides of the same object, and the real question depends on who you are in this city or society or whatever.
If we look even closer, we can identify specific aspects of our surroundings that nudge things like to one way or another. Surrounded by surveillance cameras? That's pretty dystopian. Beautiful parks and freedom of movement? Sounds pretty utopian. But it's not always that easy to spot, and that's where I think that these 6 points come in pretty handy. They're like a quick test to reveal the true intentionality behind your surroundings. But be careful.
One person's utopia is another person's dystopia, and it doesn't matter how perfect the utopia is.
So question number 1. On your way home from work, do you have more than 2 options for modes of travel?
Having multiple modes of transportation allows you to make choices in your life, which is like an element of freedom that I think, if we're thinking about utopia and dystopia, is important. That, the train's broken down so you can take a car, or you have car trouble and so maybe you can walk because everything's compact. The ability to make choices and to improvise on the fly is part of what makes a person alive. I want to think about the film Dark City, and it's a film about a very small bounded city that no one knows how to get out of, but they've all kind of forgotten that they don't know how to get out of it. And at night, at the stroke of midnight, the alien overlords put everybody to sleep. And then they move them around and set them up in new lives with new identities just to kind of experiment on them. You leave somewhere and you wish you could just be at your destination, and that feels perfect to just like put me to sleep and wake me up when I'm there. But Dark City really turns that into a horror show of like a complete lack of autonomy. Your consciousness has been taken away from you.
In contrast, limited choices and a chaotic, draining journey can reflect a city that prioritizes efficiency or surveillance over your individual contentment. Question number 2. On your last walk, did you see other life forms, human or otherwise? Were you able to successfully interact with those life forms?
The importance of experiencing life of any other kind than yourself. So, I mean, it's what we come to cities for. Science fiction lets us think through this in any number of ways. We go all the way back to Metropolis, and if you live in the utopian part of the city, you have a garden. And it's a pleasure garden, the whole upper part of Metropolis. Underground is where all the workers live, and it's just cement and concrete, and there's no life. So there's something about this human need to see and touch and interact with other living things, whether it's community or it's just the assurance that there is a world out there beyond the human-built arena of the city.
Encountering other people, animals, or plants, and having pleasant interactions with them suggests an environment built on respect, coexistence, and pleasure. Question number 3. On that same walk, if you were to look up at any point, what are the chances that you'd be looking at a space that is accessible to you both physically and functionally? And what percentage of that view is just clear sky?
That question of access to space is really, really important, because you can have a wide vista of the city. You can look at the skyline, but if you can't reach anything, if you've ever in Chicago tried to get to the lake, but you're blocked by a freeway or condominiums with private pathways, then you know that it's not just enough to see it. You have to be able to access the space too.
Looking up and seeing accessible spaces marks a city's inclusivity and openness. It indicates whether the environment is designed for public empowerment or if it's dominated by private, restrictive structures that segregate or alienate its citizens.
Elysium is probably the clearest example of that film, where the earth has been ruined and so the poor are stuck there, and then the wealthy move up to this floating space station style paradise that is Elysium. And it seems that with the kind of apocalyptic imagination of science fiction, whether it's climate-based like now or anything else before, if there is any survival, it's off-planet. It's just about leaving and getting up.
Spaces that are physically and functionally accessible promote a sense of belonging and community, while their absence can signify exclusion and a hierarchy of privilege, of which you might not belong.
If you are in a position of power, you get to get up above. You have the penthouse with the balcony, and then you can see the entire sweep of the terrain, and you can plan, you can make decisions, you can kind of extrapolate what life will be for you because you can see all the parts of the place you're in.
Question number 4. On said walk, which of the following could have been life-threatening to you? Check all that apply. Air, water, other people, machines, buildings, animals, food, infrastructure, noise, or temperature.
I mean, how much time do you have? Soylent Green is a perfect example because you have this world that has been laid waste by technology and pollution. And the only thing that people have to sustain themselves is this food called Soylent.
What is the secret of Soylent Green?
And I'm sorry to spoil the ending, but it's the most famous line in cinema history.
Soylent Green is people!
People are eating the dead who have been processed into cakes of nutrient stuff.
Question 5. When availing yourself of goods and services, is the experience mired in a confusing sequence of anonymous interactions, or your needs addressed quickly and efficiently?
The one thing I can promise you is there is no utopian film about bureaucracy, because how boring. It would be the most boring movie in the world.
The complexity or simplicity of availing goods and services mirrors the efficiency and transparency of a city's overall infrastructure. Streamlined, efficient services indicate a respect for an individual's time and dignity, suggesting a governance focused on facilitation rather than control. In contrast, a convoluted, impersonal process can reflect a system that values bureaucracy and control over citizens' well-being.
Dystopia loves bureaucracy, and the classic example of that is obviously Terry Gilliam's Brazil, which is a science fiction comedy-ish about bureaucracy. The most chilling moment in maybe any movie I've ever seen is when our protagonist goes to the Ministry of Information to try to figure out how to get out of this bureaucratic tangle he's caught in. And he says his name and they say, you can go upstairs. And he says, don't you want to see my ID? And they say,
no, sir.
And he says, I could be anybody. And they say,
no, you couldn't, sir.
And it's just terrifying that it's not just that bureaucracy makes life harder, it's that it strips away your ability to be anything other than what it thinks you are.
Question number 6. How many hours of the day are these things being recorded or monitored? Your location, your actions, your conversations, or your thoughts? The degree and nature of the surveillance you're under reveals the levels of trust and the power dynamics of a city. Minimal, transparent surveillance, that suggests a society that values privacy and autonomy, indicating a governance based on mutual respect and trust. Conversely, pervasive monitoring, it can indicate a power structure that prioritizes control and order over things like personal freedoms, a clear hallmark of any dystopian society.
The real terrifying way that surveillance often shows up in science fiction dystopia is when our kind of inner selves become surveilled. We can go back to Minority Report in this idea of not just surveillance of where you are, but of what's inside of you, what you're thinking. And that, I think, is where the science fiction imagination loves to go, is like, what if, like, we're all familiar with the idea that we're being watched all the time, but what if the parts of us you can't see are also being surveilled?
With these points, hopefully you'll be able to understand what motivates some of the design lurking behind your physical surroundings. But be careful, the ones in power are very clever. They're always looking to take something that seems great on the surface and then turn it into a mechanism of control.
Hit him again.
A voluntary dystopian imprisonment.
There's always some kind of catch that makes the utopia actually a dystopia.
We can't let him die in front of a live audience. He was born in front of a live audience.
One of the most dystopian parts of Chicago is this area on the north side. There's a stretch of sidewalk with the creepiest, semi-tragic, semi-hilarious imperfection. It's called the Chicago Rat Hole. It's gone absolutely viral, with segments on the news and even Colbert. I wanted to find out how and why this thing existed. So I commissioned an artist to recreate it, and I even worked with Tirzu to figure out how it would have happened. And that's the subject of my next video, which explores the origins and viral popularity of the Rat Hole. While it's not out yet on YouTube, it's available to watch right now on the streaming platform Nebula. Honestly, without Nebula's support, I wouldn't be able to provide you with such consistent, high-quality content like this. It's a creator-owned platform for video and podcasts that offers an incredible value for you, the viewer, and the highly curated set of over 150 educational creators on it, like me. Sam at Wendover Productions, Real Engineering, Not Just Bikes, City Beautiful, and many more of the folks that you watch are on there. On Nebula, you'll be able to gain access to the regular videos early, just like that Rat Hole video, but there's also exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. Sometimes when I get a tour of a place or interview someone that's especially interesting, I'll publish a separate video for folks that want to dive in and learn a little bit more. It's an entirely new video of mine with more of my reactions coupled with insight from others, and it just didn't quite fit within the narrow framing of the YouTube video. So there's explorations like the extended tour that I got of the unit of Marina City, or the deep dive into the history of Bilbao, Spain with my friend Iker Gil. Finally, and what's probably most exciting, is Nebula's original series. One that I think you might like is Real Life Lore's Modern Conflicts. It's a fantastic documentary series that explores and explains the complex armed conflicts since 1980. Or you might like City Beautiful's deep dives into how each of the world's greatest cities came to be. But who knows, maybe I'll get to have an original on there soon. You can gain access to this world of amazing content simply by clicking on the link on the screen, and it's also listed at the top of the description. From there, you can sign up in whatever way that you'd like. The most economical is to choose the option that's $2.50 per month when you sign up for a year. Or if you really value this channel and want to show your absolute maximum amount of support, you can choose the lifetime option. That's maybe like the angel investor tier. Either way though, you'll unlock the entire catalog of treasures from your favorite YouTubers. All the while, you'll be directly supporting this channel to share my takes on the buildings that structure our world. See you over there, and as always, thanks for watching.